That's hard to
They're
come
not
by
used to
though.
that, my guy. Right.
And if
Facts,
you
facts.
think about it, think about who that's coming from.
Right. That's the crazy part about it.
Talking about the first Def Jam artist. Hello.
Yeah,
So
right.
you know.
Yeah, it just, and I tell them, I say, man, I rap a lot taught me a lot. I ain't gonna lie. Just, what not to do, what to do, all of that. I learned early. And so I told somebody the other day, I said, man, I haven't had the no Vaseline treatment in my career. And I was like, it's because I learned the business. So I haven't had a bad contract. I ain't had no bad, nobody taking me for my money. I ain't had no bad investments. It's because, you know what I'm saying? I learned the business, which is what we here for, today to teach people about their copyrights and about their publishing and just learning the business because artists don't know the business. And so you learn the business, man. You don't have to, worry about somebody taking. I tell you all the time, man. These contracts I've been presented, I've told people, no, hell no, I ain't doing that. But most people want a leg up so bad in the business, they'll do a bad deal or they'll do a bad contract, or they just don't have the knowledge to have somebody look over it. And I get
Or they trusting people that they think got their best interests at heart, and that's definitely not the case.
Yeah. I get contracts all the time. One of my homegirls, her little nephew is a little rapper, and he had this dude representing him, and she was like, I just didn't like him. So could you look over the contract for me? Because I know, it's just something about him. So I go looking in the contract. Man, this dude has so many clauses. One of the clauses was the artist had to pay for the studio time, pay for the mixing and mastering, and they was taking a cut. It was just when I tell you this contract was so horrible. He didn't get none of his merch. He wasn't gonna get. He was gonna get like 30% of his publishing. I'm like, hey, you get 30% of your publishing. You paying for everything. You paying for the beats. You paying for the what the fuck is the company doing? What are they doing? And so I said, man,
Bro, Hit Boy been in a contract since 19, bots. He's 34. Do you hear me? He's been in the same contract since he was 19 years old. He's 34, and he just about to get out of that deal because he's successful. So
crazy.
come on, you gotta definitely know when you signing on that dotted line what you're getting yourself into. So I thought that was crazy, bro. 19 to 34, and you on the same contract, same clauses, label. You ain't making no bread out of all these years, man. That's crazy.
Well, back in the day, you owed people albums. Like, Mace couldn't do jack, and he even retired at one point because he owed Diddy so many albums. I'm like, why would you have signed? Everything in music changes. Not to say that you can't have a great, long-lasting relationship with whoever you sign with, because some artists stay with the same label for a lifetime. But why would you offer that? I think he signed a 5-album deal. Why? Like, who is in your ear saying, yeah, do that? Because if y'all fall out and you want to do something else, guess what? This man got you locked in for 3 more albums. You end up having to do some music you ain't even want to do just to fill the album title. You know what I'm saying? So you got to know about them contracts, man. Universal presented me a public. They've been trying to get me for a year and a half, Rob. Since we opened this room, I've been telling you about the deal. Until y'all talk my turn, they want to give me a 6-figure deal. I don't want 6 figures. Unless y'all talking a 7-figure deal, we not talking. And they're like, man, well, give us some time. Da-da-da. Y'all just signed Drake to $400 million.
Right. Hello.
Because I'm a UMG affiliate, because I had a pub deal, I still get money from that deal. And 3 artists I produced on there, I get like all the headline stuff before it hit the headline. I'm on the newsletter, that's what I get. So I'm looking in the ear. Drake announces big deal that I just want 1 billion. That's literally y'all could get y'all
give Drake 399.
I was just gonna say that same thing. Like, y'all could have gave him 399 and gave me. But you just don't have to say yes to these contracts, and I know my value, because as soon as they break me off with that meal and they give me that half up front, I'm bringing on the crew, and we just gonna go across the world working. So they need to just come on with it. But It's because I'm standing my ground. You know, I know you got to have a leash on you a little bit when you sign these deals. I mean, they still can benefit you, you know, money wise and career wise, but you're still on a leash. And I tell y'all that Pimp C story all the time, how he talked so bad to Jive, man. I mean, he was cussing them white dudes out. And you know, he was like, "Man, I ain't gonna never be no dog on nobody leash. And you know, if you it ain't gonna take me for no walk and yada yada yada." So, you gotta know the business. That's what's gonna help you stay and make money in this joint. So
Yeah, don't have nobody not like you either, my guy, because they will sabotage your career, especially if they in control of your budget. I just seen Trinidad James was on Drink Champs. They showed a clip. He said the label charged him $40,000 for Ti and Gucci Man wardrobe. Gucci Man had a Dickie suit on, which was probably $60, and Ti had a Grand Hustle shirt that was free. That he owned Grand Hustle. So the label charged back $40,000 for wardrobe for Ti and Gucci Man. So think about that. You lost 40 racks off a Dickie suit and a T-shirt. So that's what I'm saying. You have to know what you're getting yourself into. You have to know your rights as an artist as well. Some people think that they signed, they ain't got no rights. You still have rights as an artist. You still have you still have to hold people accountable. You just can't think they're doing great business because they're a label, and you know what I'm saying, they've been doing business this long, so you just don't trust everything they do. You have to be aware of where your money going, how you getting paid, and that's why we're in this room, so you can know when you start making money with your, you got to protect your IP. You know what I'm saying? You got to make sure you know what you're doing, and that's why we have this Saturday room. So if you in the audience and you want to come up, ask a question, or if you're in the chat, you want to put a question in the chat. That's what we had this room for, man. But nah, Bots, you exactly right. You got to know your worth. You got to build leverage. You got to make sure that you can pop your collar when you walk. They invite you to the you know what I mean, to the office. You're not trying to get there. You know what I mean? You got to understand like what you're bringing to the table and what you're trying to get out of it. Because if you're gonna get a payday, you know that payday come with like you said, a long leash or a short leash. So
yep.
it's really going to depend on your leverage. Is going to depend on how long or short your leash is. Hello.
That is a fact. Well, Lewis, I'm gonna step back, brother. This is your time to shine. I'm just here for the oral support.
Yep, I was just enjoying the conversation.
With them numbers, yesterday I meant because I had to. Remember I asked you for the login. I was sharing that. That's who I was sharing it with. You know, just so I gave them all three. I gave them the split sheets. I gave them the distribution, thing, and I gave them the publishing, and they were just, man, they were blown away, bro. Like,
awesome.
Whoever taught you the game, like, taught you where. And I was like, yeah. I say, man, well, they actually want to get with you because I was telling them, and then Perry told them about you. Also, who was I dealing with yesterday that said you would call? Oh, Nicole Lundy. I was working with her. DJ Chop comes to the studio. I mean, the studio all the time, but they want to go through you too. So we're finishing up on her album. And so they're gonna go through you too, because of course I spoke well of you, my brother. But he said he reached out to you. Matter of fact.
Yeah, I spoke to him. It was a while back. I spoke to him, and we spoke, and he said he'll get back. So I figured he was doing his homework. But that's awesome, man. We're gonna have a great, great, great year. It's a lot of stuff coming up.
Yeah, man.
So I guess we'll start on the copyrights. We always like to start out by listing the 6 rights of copyright for people who don't know or haven't been to the room and heard these. And this is what gives you the right. Once you make a claim on your copyright, this is what kind of establishes your authority. And it just goes downhill from there. But the 6 rights are the right to reproduce the work, and we'll be talking about an original work that an author creates, whether it's music or lyrics or a combination of both. So, and before anybody, I don't want. So we talking about music publishing and music copyright. Copyright extends, it's intellectual property and extends past that. Of course, you got, writers and authors who write traditional novels and stuff like that. But we're talking about music copyrights for the most part when we talk about copyrights here. Um, so the right to reproduce the work, the right to make a derivative of the work, the right to distribute the work, the right to perform the work publicly, the right to display the work publicly, and then the sixth right is only in regards to a sound recording, and that's the right to perform the work publicly by digital transmission. And that right there is because of the way the United States um, doesn't pay the sound recording owner when it's get played over like terrestrial radio, but digitally they do, and that sixth right is how you get your public performance if you're the owner of the sound recording copyright. So those are the six rights to copyright. We usually talk about how you could claim your copyright, but today we're gonna go more into publishing. Just understand those are the six rights because I want to talk about publishing a little bit today. And we'll open the floor for questions because a lot of times I have conversation with people about publishing. I think publishing get confused exactly what it is, um, how you make money from it, what people who represent you, on the publishing spectrum, how it usually works. So, kind of giving an overview of that this morning before we get to the questions. So, first of all, publishing is in regards to writers, not artists, not somebody has something to say. Oh, sorry. Um, not performers, not just the writer. Whoever writes the music and whoever writes the lyrics. If it's both, you kind of combine them together. But this is who. Does somebody have something to say?
No, I was just
Talk over
clapping my
nobody.
mic because you were talking about the
Oh,
writers, and I'm a writer, so I was just clapping my mic.
oh, all right. Thank you. So yeah, so publishing is for the writer. The writer is the author of the work, and it starts with the writer, and you got 100%. I don't want to confuse it and start talking about some people collect it as 200%. That's just account. That's just numbers, right? People. We're just gonna say you're publishing as a writer. You as a writer represent 100%, and we're gonna keep it simple. You wrote one song for now, and again, I want to make another distinction between a song and a record. Publishing is for songs, the composition. Um, um, and so we're talking about you got 100% as the writer, right? If you're a self-administered writer, meaning you ain't gonna have no other help, you're gonna do everything yourself. You're gonna keep that 100% and do what you need to do with it as your song get placed into the marketplace. But that's not usually how it works, and that's not how publishing is designed to work. So, what the law is saying, what standard is, you take that 100% and you split it in half, and you call the one half the writer's share. That's 50%, and then you call the other half the publishing share. That's 50%. Because law said we want to protect the person who is the author, who created it, and we want to make sure that whoever they get to come in and help them, this 50% goes to them no matter what happened. That's entitled to them by law. They should not give that to nobody else. That's theirs. Excuse me, 1 second. Sorry.
His daughters be his co-pilots when he cooking. And kids don't say nothing till you start talking. They be quiet while you on mute soon as you get off mute.
Like, Daddy!
Right. But if y'all got any questions about publishing and copyrights and you don't want to come to the stage, you definitely can type them in the chat. We'll just fill this space until Brother Lewis, the king, comes back.
Well, there's a question in the chat asking, will we sign a 360 deal?
No. That's a hell no. That ain't even a regular no.
To the hell to the no.
How? Not even.
Okay, so think I'm back now.
Now, Luke, would you sign a 360 deal?
Well, I would need a little bit more information. Like, so what we commonly know as a 360 deal, like Bot said, no. But I think, most 360 deals that's offered to artists is just that somebody, just trying to sit in places where they ain't gonna do no work. You know what I'm saying? It's like a catch-all. But if they're gonna do the actual work for the stuff that they want to get paid for, for instance, if your record label really want to get paid off of you touring, they're gonna get behind you in that. They ain't gonna just put out your records and then collect money off touring and they ain't helping you make that money. You know what I'm saying? And TV, etc., whatever. But most 360s, they just want to get paid because they feel like they, giving you exposure, but they're not doing the work in those areas. And then when you got to go get people to do the work in those areas, then it's an argument about who's supposed to be getting what money because I'm doing the work and these people is collecting. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, so the short answer is no. But if I could look in the details of what's in the 360 deal, you know what I'm saying, and start untangling what rights they should have and what rights they shouldn't, or where they should collect from. And if you collecting from this area, how you helping me generate in this area? And if I can't see a clear way where you helping me generate, then I'm gonna say, nah, you shouldn't collect no money in that area. So that would be my take on 360 deals. But most 360 deals are unfair because the people is not, helping in the areas where they collecting the money. You know what I'm saying? Then it just, it start, it's just 360 deals in most part is there to marginalize the artist. You know what I'm saying? Which they already being marginalized in a sense where even if you got a good deal on paper, by the time they finish picking you apart with their expenses and they, and they costs, even a good deal is bad after they start doing that. So you just got to know what to look for. Like, Bots was even saying earlier, like you just got to know the business and know what to look for. So that would be my answer to that. But back to the 50%. So now, you got 50% that goes to the writer automatically of the publishing share. And again, I advise you to think of it as a whole. Don't think of it as, my writer or my publisher, because it's 100%. They go together. But for law's sake, 50% goes to the writer. So, and then the other 50%, which is the publishing interest of the publishing, if you look at the way publishing work, I would say you take out 15% to whoever's going to be the administrator of the publishing catalog. And so now you got 65% out of that. 50 is to the writer, 15% is to whoever's administering. And we'll go over what administering, means and what things, what it usually look like. But so, and then it's 35% left to split between whoever or whatever entities is going to help, exploit the song, try to find opportunities for the song, protect the song, different things like that. Promote the song, market the song, and again, don't confuse the song with the record because the record makes its own money and has its own procedures and policies. So that 35% will be shared. It could be shared a number of ways, and sometimes it's shared amongst several publishers, including sometimes the writer could say, well, I know I'm the writer, but I also are going to be helping in the publishing side of moving the music. So I want a stake there. All right. And, sometimes it could be a financial person it could be anybody really who's helping move the song forward or put the song in the marketplace. And those people will be called co-publishers. You know what I'm saying? And they will split that last 35% amongst whoever's, co-publishing in the song. I notice a lot of, and I try to make separation between the artists, the writers, because I notice, first of all, in today's age, the writer and the performer a lot of times are the same person. They're also performing, and they come to try to talk about their publishing, but they really bring in they artist persona with them, and that's what they're talking about. And so a lot of people come to me and say they want me to help them publish their record, and the only reason they really want a publisher is because they want to try to help promote the record. But again, we're talking about the song, right? So looking for help to blow up your record, to blow up your record, is not a good reason to give anybody any publishing interest, because they're probably not going to blow up your record, right? Publishing is for the song, it's for the administration and the operation of the song. So for instance, if you have, when you put out your record on Spotify, right, and you're selling your record on iTunes, that's your record, right? There's some things, of course, because you gave yourself a right to create a record from your song, right? And you should have some people that's assisting you on that side for the record. And out of that money, the writer side of you get a very small portion of it, very small portion, like you know, very small portion. So you got to understand how money derive, how your property, your intellectual property is making money, and then you can look and see who you want to bring in to help you. If somebody is giving you money to promote your record, that's not enough reason to give them points on your publishing. Those are two different things, right? So you give them points on your record, because so and if you're able to make that distinction between you as a writer and you as an artist, you as a performer or whatever, and then the people who's coming to you to do these things. But the good thing to remember as far as your publishing go, as a writer, just remember you get 50% as the writer. It's in law, it's standard. Like, only if you give it away, somebody come and say, yeah, let me get on there as a writer with you, because then intellectual property is not just property in because we call it property. It's property, it's an asset. You know what I'm saying? And not only it's an asset that's secured by the Congress, and it's an asset class. So if you as a writer and you wrote 100% of the song, and then you bring somebody else and say, okay, you're gonna collaborate with me, and they didn't write, you just split your asset in half. On the other hand, when you're working with them on the publishing side, you're not splitting your asset in half. The asset is still that whole. You're just splitting aside. But if you give the person that writing and say they wrote with you, you just split your asset in half, especially if they didn't, right? Because now they're gonna get that same 100%, and that 100% gonna be split in half. I know it starts getting a little confusing, but again, you always just go back to the basics of you as a writer and say, I got 100%, 50 to me, 50 to my publishing side, right? And when you hear somebody really say somebody took on my publishing, it's really no way by law for somebody to take all of somebody's publishing unless they don't go down as a writer or they put themselves down as a writer. Usually they talking about that publishing half. When they say, man, they got all my publishing, they're talking about that publishing half. And then, they get the writer's half. And a lot of times what happens, especially on the mechanical side of publishing, that it goes to the publisher first. And if you got a bad publisher or a publisher don't know what they're doing, they don't turn the writer's half of the mechanical side over to the writers. On the public side, public performance, you don't worry about that, because BMI or ASCAP is not going to pay the writing half to the publisher. They're going to pay it directly to the writer. So yeah, it could get a little confusing, but again, just think about your whole publishing as one whole, and then break it up into half. The half stays with you, and then you can further break up the other half into start with the administration. And I say a good rule of thumb is to use administration as 15%, because a lot of times you're gonna have to, especially when you're talking about world publishing, you're gonna have to outsource that 15% to an administrator that have the capabilities to collect worldwide, as opposed to just here in the United States, and Canada, New Mexico, North America. So that's if you have a publisher and it's not a publisher who have that infrastructure to collect around the world, that 15% gonna go to somebody else anyway. And it's that 15% is gonna be reserved to the person or entity who's administering the publishing. And then the other 35 will be split up amongst the people who's doing the work. And you could get granular and you could start saying, amongst the other 3 or the other 4, however many people are going to split up the other 35%, I should say, exactly what roles they're going to play. And we'll talk about some of the roles, you know, that handles publishing, which is really no different from the record label. So, you could kind of think of your publishing entity. Publishers do for writers what record labels do for artists. That's a simple way to think about it. um, because they do a lot of the same thing. Only thing that publishers represent songs, and record labels represent records. So it's the difference. And record labels pay publishers for the songs that they use in their records, right? So a lot of times, sometimes the record label and the publishers could be kind of at odds. I don't know if everybody aware, they just came to a conclusion where on downloads and records, more physical, writers just got to increase, writers and publishers just got to increase to 12 cents. It was 9.1 cents since like the 90s. And it just went
We
up.
moving up, Lou. We moving up. We got a couple more cents.
Yeah,
They couldn't even give us 5 cents. They have gonna cut us for 3. So
yeah. But
come on, my guy.
The big thing in that is that they also added life increase, wage of living, cost of living increased automatically. Yep. So that's a great thing. And so that only really matters so much on the physical side. If you happen to be an artist who or a writer who's giving your music to an artist who happen to be able to move physical music, that's a great thing because especially in the heyday when like a label manufacture 1 million records for you, right? You get that 12 cents 1 million times, whether that record sell or not. You know what I'm saying? So it can be quite lucrative depending on how big your operations is, or the operations, if you're a writer, who you selling your songs to. You know what I'm saying? So it seems small when you break it down to that 12 cents, but just imagine that 12 cents times
Lou,
1 million.
But think about this, Lou. How much more money they could give more away? Like, you know what I'm saying? 'Cause for them to do that, they like, all right, we can break this piece off, but there's more money out there, my guy. There's more.
It's always money out there.
You know that, my guy.
Yeah, it's always out there more. But it just goes to show you how, in the music space, even sometimes the people that's on the same sides, they have conflicts where they have to iron out. Because you really talking about 2 companies who's supposed to actually be collaborating with each other. And sometimes one person is sitting on both sides, right? If you the writer and you the artist, you really arguing against yourself. You know what I'm saying? But because you have representatives talking for you, that conversation gets very convoluted. And sometimes the writer is not even really in the conversation. It's just, people who's, talking on a very high level. But, the principle is still there because even it helps you because even if you're an independent writer and you just happen to your songs go to a major artist, right? You getting that 12 cents plus 1 million. You ain't got nothing to do with whatever his agreement with his record label or her record label, as long as, even if they have a control composition clause, that don't affect you unless if you don't agree with it. But so it's still a good thing. A raise is always a good thing. It might not seem like it's only a few cents, but man, it can mean a lot, especially to, some writers who they living off, trust me, over time, that 3 cents per download or per record, it helps. So I don't know if there's any questions so far about your publishing, if because I really want to hammer the way publishing works, because I think a lot of people, especially artists, they come into talking about publishing thinking it's the same thing as them as an artist and a record label, and it's not.
Yeah, I think Vonnie, you got a question. I saw your question in the chat. You want to elaborate on that a little more?
Yes. So an artist came to me because they were kind of concerned, and I was like, well, I don't know much. I don't know anything about that. So pretty much they collaborated with someone and beforehand they did not know about split sheets. And so when I go on a Spotify and I look at the song details, their name is not listed anywhere as a writer or anything, just a person that put together this mixtape. So, is there a way that that could be fixed? Like, this person's not even on the song. So, you know, I don't know.
Yeah, so I mean, everything could be fixed, but just because they're not listed there, that don't mean they're actually not a writer on the song. I definitely would need more details. But if they should know whether they're a writer on the song because whoever is their publisher or if they self-administered, they should have went and filed this song in ASCAP or BMI. Then they would be able to see the splits. I would tell them to either go to BMI, ASCAP, and put the title of the song, try to find the song, and see who's listed as the writers of the song. And if they're not listed there, then they're not listed, as a songwriter. But Spotify's, so it's the record side, and it's just whoever's putting in the metadata or the information that goes into the metadata. They could have just left their name off the credits. But that is definitely an indication, though, that something, might be wrong. Whoever submitted it to the whatever distribution that they went through. But that's the information you see on Spotify usually come through whoever released the song through their distributor, and that information, is from that side, not necessarily the publishing side. So I would say go try to find it in BMI, ASCAP. And if they know they wrote the song and they don't know, just tell them to go file it for themselves. And if they don't know the other collaborator's name, put unknown. And when BMI or ASCAP get conflicting information, they'll reach out to whoever filed the record in the song, in the first place, and then they'll try to get it straight. And nobody won't get paid until the conflict is resolved. So if they know they actually wrote on the song, but they also gotta know if they really wrote on the song. Right? Don't do that. And if they was just in the session really DJing and they put them as a DJ, you know what I'm saying? And they can't, because again, sometimes when you get in the studio, and I can't stress this enough, you think you're writing on the song, but the composition is already written and the splits is already done, and you actually in there just working on the record. And a record and a song accrue money and compensate two different ways, and they have two different credit systems. So they could have been in there working on the record and not necessarily working on the song. So and I don't know. I'm just because I don't know I'm just telling you some of the things to look out for. I hear a lot of times a person say, I was a writer on that song, and they really wasn't. They did some work on the record.
I see what you're saying.
And most of the time when we're in the studio, we're working on a record, but the song is embedded under. And some people is good enough to do both at the same time, but a lot of times we write the songs before we record the record. And you don't have to be on both sides of the equation. So that would be my advice.
Thank you.
Any more questions?
Yeah, I have a question for you. So, I'm just getting my feet wet for real in the songwriting space, and I did a song for an artist recently, and the producer got 50%. I received 30. No, I'm sorry. I received 15. The other writer received 15, and the artist received the remaining 20. Right. In that aspect of what I just said, is that because I was the top line writer, right? Should I be entitled to more than just the 15 that I split with the other writer?
Can you repeat that last part one time?
Because I was the top line writer on the track, meaning I came up with majority of I came up with the hook and everything. am I entitled? Should I have been entitled to more of a percentile than the other writer?
Well, not necessarily, but you could have. So I would kind of think about it like this. So I'm assuming that the producer was also the composer because we're talking about writers here and publishing. So I'm just going to assume that and say that's why he got 50% because he was the composer of the music.
Right, right.
Right. All right. And then I'm also going to assume that the artist also was a writer, not just an artist. That's why they got. So I'm assuming everybody was writers.
See, this
Right.
is the thing. The artist got the 20% because of the machine that's behind him as an entity. If that makes, you know what I mean? Like, it's because he's actually the one performing the track. I think that's why we agreed to giving him 20% because, like, if he didn't get on the track, we wouldn't really be having the opportunity to be making money the way we could. You know what I mean? It's
Right,
like
right.
if,
Well, I hope that machine was a major label or, Beyonce, a very, very accomplished artist, and they had that much leverage. If it wasn't, I would tell you, yeah, okay, probably a bad deal. But, that's just my opinion. So again, I'm always just here to say that I'm talking about writers, right? So if y'all deem the artist a writer, then okay, they're a writer. But so nobody is entitled to nothing. If nothing was decided upon, the people who wrote the lyrics would split it in a third. But as the top line writer, you more than welcome to say, I think I should get a bigger percentage, right? And if y'all all agree to that, because who's to decide what's really the driving force, of it? First of all, right now y'all saying that the artist is the biggest force, right, of driving that song, only because where the record is going to go. Now you saying, okay, I'm the top line writer because what maybe you had the hook, right? But maybe if somebody who wrote the melody might say, well, no, my melody is the one that's really driving the song, or my verse. I don't know. So you're not necessarily entitled. You're more than welcome to make that assertion, and if y'all, if everybody agree to it when y'all do the splits, you know, it's it is. But I wouldn't say that anybody is entitled to, one collaborator is entitled to something over another unless it's defined, amongst the collaboration. Once it's defined amongst the collaboration, and that should have been done prior. So you talking about if it's already set, it's kind of like a moot point back because and there's been groups broke up in history for that. You know what I'm saying? Like, one person doing all the writing, but at the beginning, before they knew how lucrative their writing was going to be, they agreed to share their writing with the rest of the band. You know what I'm saying? You look at, somebody like Lionel Richie, who didn't want to do that, right? Because he knew, or the publisher he had knew, and he didn't want to split his writing share with the band. So it's been in history, things like this, when you don't do it at the beginning. So I guess to answer your question, you're not really entitled, but you certainly want to negotiate for what you feel you're worth and use your leverage to kind of, hammer that point home, if that answers your question.
Yeah, it definitely did. Thank you, man. I appreciate that.
Any more questions?
I have another one if anyone else doesn't want to.
Shoot.
Do you believe that? Well, I kind of know the answer, but I just wanted you to go more in depth. But do you feel as though like independent writers, do you feel like they should sign to a publishing company?
I mean, yeah. If it makes sense for them, So if it's just a dry answer, like, should they? Give me 1 second.
And Bots, I got the question for you too when Louis is done.
Yep. You can do that because I'm grabbing something from my daughter. Bots, we're gonna be down for 2 minutes.
What up, man? What it is?
What's up, Bots? My question for you is, how do you feel independent songwriters should go about, getting noticed and getting a publishing deal eventually? Like, what advice do you think?
First, I would say, why is the goal to get a publishing deal? That really shouldn't just be the goal as a writer. I mean, there's independent writers who are making a great careers that are independent. They're not signed with any major or publishing deal. I've personally been signed to 3 publishing deals. The last one being Universal Music Group. And I mean, they're not all that they're hyped up to be. You know, why it's cool. You know, there's a reason I haven't, and I talked about it earlier. I don't know if you were in the room, but I got a publishing deal that's been on the table with Universal again for almost a year, just because they're not talking the terms I want to hear or the money amount that I want to hear. But to answer the first question, I know I went in the wrong order, but man, brother, the whole thing is relationships, man. It's networking now because the game has kind of changed. You know, where as 10 years ago, 15 years ago, writers were brought in for artists, and a lot of artists didn't write. Well, a majority of the artists you meet in today's music business, they write. So they don't want writers, and they don't. Or if they do want writers, they have a team already that they trust to pen them some dope records. So one way to get noticed is networking. That's why Clubhouse is a great tool to meet artists, meet producers. Hey, I'm a songwriter from X, Y, and Z. If you got anything you want me to write on, let me know. That's how you build, your network. I've met so many artists on here that I've personally produced or maybe engineered, their records just by networking, just by having a conversation. Because music right now is 98% business, 2% talent. That ain't a quote ratio. That's just the bots ratio. Because people are getting careers made and advancing in the music business simply because of who they know. And it's kind of always been like that, but it's even more so now. If you read some of the backstories on a lot of these artists that's getting quote unquote deals or getting placements, they'll say, well, somebody introduced me to, or somebody brought me to. It's still about who you know, and even more so now because a lot of the stuff y'all listen to, I probably don't listen to. It's redundant. It's the same sound, and you even wonder yourself like, well, dang, how they get known? It's because it's the people they know. It's not really their talent or their skill anymore because music is so watered down right now. Everybody's a producer, everybody's an artist, everybody's a songwriter. So how do you navigate on a freeway that's in traffic? I use that example because everybody's doing music right now. Everybody. When I say everybody, there's 100 music rooms on Clubhouse. There's people dropping music every day. Spotify has 60,000 songs uploaded every day. So everybody and their mama's doing music. So how do you navigate and build the relationships to help you get the exposure or get the placements that you want? There's not a real map, brother. It's not a map. I wish there was just a 1, 2, 3 step to tell you, but it's not. But the key thing I always tell people is to build your network. The more your network is your net worth. So the more people you come in contact with and interact with and find out what they're doing, and you know what I'm saying, you build with them, then you know, that helps. The event that I do, that I cultivated, called the Cookout. The Cookout, you see the album that's up there in the link. The Cookout is a great outlet for independent creatives, and I didn't say just writers because we have everybody pulls up there. It's a space where it is studio based. So if you are a songwriter, you have an opportunity to network with other songwriters. You have an opportunity to network with other artists, with other producers, and that helps build your net worth. I'm sorry. And so there's not really a roadmap. I get asked the question all the time: how do I get noticed? How do I do this? Well, the way I did it, is just networking. That it's not that everybody likes me or I'm the dopest producer, but I network. You know what I mean? I go in different, even on Clubhouse. That's why Clubhouse, even though Clubhouse has benefited my career before Clubhouse, I had already had my deals and I already had my plaques and all that. But Clubhouse has afforded me the opportunity to accelerate certain things in my career by meeting different people and meeting different artists. I've worked with hundreds from Clubhouse alone. And it's because I chose the network. I didn't get on Clubhouse to, go in the the phone bone rooms and all that. I got on here to network and build my career. And so networking, bro, it's really, it sounds simple, but it's hard, because you get with certain people, they have their egos, and some that may have feel like they've arrived with their career, and so they don't want a songwriter. And while songwriters are always necessary, not everybody wants them. I know artists right now who I'm producing who don't want songwriters. And I'm telling them, like, you need one because the songs you penning ain't it. But, you got to deal with the ego of, well, if I bring in another songwriter, I got to split this and that. Well, look, I'd rather have a third of something than zero or nothing. So there's a lot of different things that come into play when you talk about maneuvering in this industry and growing as a songwriter. Now, while there's different camps you can go to, there's a lot of ways to build your network, and get noticed. And if you can pen hot shit, you definitely gonna stand out because music right now is at its simplest form. So if you're able to put that on pen to paper and make it dope, then you're gonna stand out. So that's it's no there's no roadmap to success. Everybody who's been successful to whatever level you call success, some people don't want the number one hit. Some people may just want to write songs for people to make them feel good. Some people may just want to, there's different reasons why people do music, and so you gotta figure out what do I want my success to be? Do I want it? And I heard you say, to get a publishing deal. While I've had three, they're cool, but the independent route right now is just the route to be because independents are pretty much running the game. You know what I mean? And I've been giving this illustration since it was brought to me last month that 2 years ago at the Grammys, it was 26% independent artists that were nominated. 26. Keep that in mind. Just 2 years ago. Well, this year it was 51%. It was 51%. The nominees that won were 51%, and 38% of the winners were independent. So I said all that to say independent is the best route. This is the greatest day and greatest time to be an independent because you can control so much more. Signing a publishing deal is cool, but a lot of these deals are nothing but glorified loans. Whereas my first publishing deal I did, because I had a little success already, they met me at my terms. But I've seen people getting publishing deals to where, you got to accrue so many points on the album, or you got to get so many placements in this allotted time, or you kind of void the contract, you won't get the rest of your money, all that kind of thing. So it's easy to navigate as a songwriter. You just network with different artists. Hey, what kind of records you looking for? Do you have a producer? Find you a producer that can you know, help you get in these different spaces of me and so and so working together, and we got some records for artists. If you want this pop sound, I got this pop sound. If you want, this R&B, I got this R&B. So it's really, really about networking, man, because there's not one roadmap. Nobody has taken the same steps to get to where they've arrived to, and so hopefully you found some little nuggets in something I said because it's just not you know what I mean? Everybody wants the secret to success and nobody has it. We really don't. My road to success wasn't somebody else's road. And your road's not gonna be somebody else's road. So it's just one of the biggest keys though is networking, bro. I don't know why people don't like to talk and don't want to because egos and pride and all that. Man, look, I don't care about all that. Can we make some money together? Can we make a legacy together? Can we make some hit records together? That's all I care about. Pride can go to the side. So you got to be humble when you're meeting certain people. If you're in a room with some I hate to use the word, but you got to use it in this industry, A-list people, and you're trying to submit to them. Build a relationship with them. How you do that? You follow them. You may like a couple of pictures. You may comment on some stuff. So, if you do get in their inbox, it don't seem like you just jumped in there. I call it social media foreplay. Everybody knows that. You kind of touch them and warm them up and rub on them. You don't just jump in the jump in that thing, you kind of, set it up. So it's really about networking, and that's why this the name. That's the name of our club, because that's what we believe in. We believe in networking, and it's no egos. You know what I'm saying? We try to connect the dots, and even if you got songs you've already written, shoot me a couple of demos. I may have some artists that may need them. You know what I mean? And if you don't have, you're like, well, I ain't, there yet. I just da 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 da. Find you a writing camp. And I hate to, pat myself on the back, but there's been a lot of relationships formed at these cookouts I do. A lot. Over a year and a half, there's been almost 500 artists come through. Whether they do poetry, whether they do songwriting, whether they do spoken word, whether they're a comedian, whatever, A&R, they've all pulled up, and that's a great place and a great space to meet them. And I cultivate where you can come in and just you got the chance to write on a record that may be on the charts. Well, I ain't gonna even say maybe, that will be on the charts, and it's gonna give you exposure as a writer. The album that's at the link at the top has 31 contributors, artists and songwriters. 31. It's a compilation, and that was just people who came to the cookout. And so yeah, I think I'm gonna land my yacht right there, my brother. So hopefully, I gave you a couple of things to think about.
Yeah, that was amazing, Bots. Like, thank you so much. I definitely took from that what resonated with me for sure. And yeah, I definitely will hit you up as far as like what's in the future for the cookout. And I do have demos, so I'll message you and shoot those over to you as well. Thank you again, Bots.
Just hit me on IG. I don't do the back channel. I done crossed over. I'm 2,200 unread back channels. And it's only because I was, old school Clubhouse. And I believe to form a relationship with somebody, you got to get off this app. And I just, so just IG me. Hit me on Instagram. Bro, we can, like I said, if I got plenty of artists I work with. There ain't no shortage. Everybody I work with need records. So if you got something, like I say, 30% or 40% or 50% or whatever the percentage is of the record is better, than 0% of nothing. So yeah, let's work. That's what I'm about.
Man, thank you, Bots. I just followed you on the gram. I'm about to message you now.
All right, Lewis, back to you, my brother.
Yeah, I'm back. So I can't remember the question I was answering, but I think you answered it as I was listening to your answer on the second question. So if there's any more questions, or we want to circle back to anything that we spoke about earlier that you might not understood, or maybe sometimes I have a tendency to speak a little fast when we're talking about publishing, because I do get it, and I kind of like don't explain everything in this detail. I try to, but because I kind of get the end game of it, I might speak it too fast, and it might just be that a small step that somebody didn't quite get. If there's anything I could clear up, I will. Just ask it. And so if there's no more questions, or no questions don't come up shortly, we'll end. My daughters are up.
A sunset clause means that the person that provides the contract to you is entitled to everything that they done for you in the time span of the active contract, even if the contract's over, right?
Yeah. It's sunset clause is something that people put in, and it's usually, you find it a lot with managers, because of the sometimes a manager contract can only be a year, but a lot of the stuff that they do, they probably won't even start making money for a year. So it's just some guarantees that a lot of the work that they do while they was working with you, and the time that they was working with you, they can still get paid for some of the things they set up, in that time frame. Traditionally, publishing don't usually have to, really worry about that, because it's such a long arrangement when it's done the right way. Publishers and writers usually work together for a very long time. So I mean, I guess newer publishing relationships maybe not, certainly on admin, you can see some sunset clause. But yeah, so yeah, that's what a sunset clause is. It's just a manager or another representative trying to make sure that they could get paid for some of the things that they set up while they was working with you, even after they stopped working with you, which is fair most times. You just got to watch it. Sometimes they put stuff that they get a little unfair. Of course, everybody want to say they was um responsible for some things, and they might really weren't, or they should get paid for this amount of time after. But then you have new management coming in, and they want to get paid. So again, a lot of times it's to marginalize the artist or the creator. You just got to again be careful with. I mean, I would say any clause, anything that you see that's a clause in a contract is worth, and not only understanding what the definition of that clause is, but what it actually means to the people who made it up, right? So coming to ask me what a sunset clause, I can tell you the general definition of what. But if you got a contract on the table, ask them specifically what this sunset clause mean, and tell them to give you specific dates, times of, okay, when we stop, how long you supposed to get paid for this, and how, because that should be also in there. It should be like a schedule. Usually in a contract, after the contract, you usually get a schedule, or you get, other things that tell you how things are gonna work. So, somebody just give you a contract and everything is just vague, somebody better draw like what those steps are. Because if you don't, that's the first recipe for getting a lot of I don't even gonna say jerk, a lot of miscommunication. Like if ain't nobody telling you what they could do, what I'm saying, in the contract, when they're gonna do it. A contract is just not about money, and it's not just about, the general terms of what we're doing, but it's also about what's the steps, what's the schedule. If it's money supposed to be paid out, it's supposed to be a time schedule. Are they paying you quarterly? Are they paying, what I'm saying? If they cutting stuff from you, what they cutting? What do they got a right to give away for free? Not give away for free, because all this affect that percentage that you talked about at the top, right? Everybody, we always look at the percentage, but then you got to look at the things that's going to affect the percentage. So I guess to get right back to what you're saying, any clause in a contract, because if I got a contract and this is something that it's a clause in a contract, it's there for a reason, and you should want to know why. And if most clauses in a contract is there to, let's be honest, to protect the people who's writing the contract. You know what I'm saying? It's not, they usually don't put the clause in there to protect, the person they trying to sign. The clause is usually in there to protect themselves. So, yeah. Any more questions, or hopefully that answered that in a long, went a long way to answer about a sunset clause. But I mean, you pretty much answered it when you asked the question. I just kind of, reiterated the long and short of it. So, any more questions, concerns? But if not, we'll talk about for a minute. Yep, I heard somebody.
Yeah, I have a few questions.
Sure.
Do you want me to just give them all? I just have three. Like give them all to you right now, or separate?
Yeah, I mean, I probably can answer it better if you separate them, but if you
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, first, off that last conversation, when would contracts be involved? Like, are they always involved, or are they only involved in certain scenarios? Or
Well, so contracts should always be involved, especially when there's consideration, meaning somebody is giving up something, and somebody is taking something, and so it should be consideration both ways. So it should be a contract involved, but a contract, it can also be verbal. It could be written on a contract is basically a meeting of the minds, and it's two parties who's supposed to have the capacity to understand what they're getting into or what they agreeing to, in that contract. So, for a contract to be valid, there's going to be certain things that's going to be taken again under consideration for it to even, be contract and to even be valid. But it's just even before you have a written contract, you kind of have a verbal contract. And most of the times when you get in a legitimate contract, it's going to be a proposal first, then somebody they'll send you something with like the points, the points of what's going to be, discussed, and then you're going to kind of go back, what up the negotiation. But so whenever two people, even if it's just talk about doing something, where I'm giving up something or you giving up something or we doing something together, that's a contract. You know what I'm saying? Now, what makes the contract binding, of course, is when you do the signing of it, and it's recognized by people, notaries, and you get more into the technical stuff. But just the understanding of what we're doing is a contract. The main thing is that both parties understand. And again, a lot of times, even in conversation, you know, and especially with publishing, people just don't understand what they're giving away, what they're getting, and what they're supposed to get in return. Again, and I'm just talking from my experience. A lot of time when I'm talking about people trying to, see if I could represent them as a publisher, they really talking to me about their artist side, you know what I'm saying, or their performance side. They're never really talking about themselves as a songwriter. Here's another thing. If you only probably writing mostly songs for yourself, you're not writing songs as well for other people, you probably don't even need a music publisher, right? Because really, your whole songwriting career is based on what you can do as an artist, not really, what your songs can do. You know what I'm saying? And then a lot of times the stuff you're gonna do a lot of the work, and somebody gonna say they publish, and that's when you have a lot of problems. You see a lot of rappers getting in, and they got a publisher, but really the only work that they getting is work that they on. And then years later they like, yo, I got jerked, because they probably really didn't even need a publisher. But most of the time the people is they publisher is also their record label, and because most major record labels also got a publishing side. You know what I'm saying? We brought up Mace, Boss brought up Mace early, but you know what I'm saying? Mace was not only under a record label contract with Puffy, but Puffy was also his publisher. You know what I'm saying? So it starts getting very conflicted, and when you got a contract with the same person, if they don't understand who they are, right? Again, saying who you are. If you're the producer and don't understand you're also the composer, that's a conflict of interest. And if you don't understand that conflict and don't know how to negotiate that conflict or navigate that conflict, or don't even realize that there is a conflict, a lot of times, that's a recipe to get, I don't even want to say cheated, but stuff fall through the cracks. Music business is primarily a licensing business, and it's easy for stuff to fall through the cracks, not get the credit you deserve. If you don't get the credit, or one little code wasn't put in for you, wasn't putting you here, it's easy for your money to just get, go down a hole if you ain't getting that money directly from somebody, like, selling a song. And I'm gonna try to keep it on song, because we're talking about publishing. I try to be very direct when we're talking about songs and records, producers versus composers, artists versus writers. Although they could be the same person, sometimes they're not. You know what I'm saying? In any particular asset, and it's a different copyright for the sound recording than there is for the composition. So. And hopefully I answered that question. We can move on to the next one. If not, clarify a little bit more, and I can try to answer it more in depth.
Yeah. Just off of that though, thank you, by the way. So if I were to work with you, for example, like, do you and your company, like, do you guys have like would you give me a contract, for example, and kind of explain, like, how do you guys have that set up as far as like
Right. Well, so
yeah.
I like to think of what I do as an agreement, right? I'm a publisher. I work with writers. And most of the time it's based per song, right? If we got a song or a collection of songs in other instances, we have an agreement for those particular songs, or song. And again, like I said earlier, it starts off with, the writer, of course, owning 50%, the writer side of the publishing. Anything that we do, any money that accrue, the writer start with getting that 50%. The other 50%, 15% goes to whoever's administrating it. Usually it's going to be me, because I'm the publisher. And if I have to assign it to an international administrator, that 15% get assigned, to them. The other 35%, we have the conversation between, am I doing the publishing myself, or the writer, or anybody else coming in, not sub-publishing, that's something different. We haven't even talked about that, but co-publishing, and then we'll split that remaining 35% amongst the co-publishers. And basically that's our agreement. If I'm doing all the publishing myself and it's like I'm doing the publishing, my company is doing the publishing, this is what it will really look like. It will be the writer 50, admin 15, 35 to me and my company. If the writer is publishing, also a co-publisher, and we decide is out of the 35, what would that be? You just split it in half, whatever it was a bit, the other 35 will be split between, what is this, like 17 and a half? 17 and a half between me and the writer, not the other publisher, and so forth on anybody that you bringing in that's gonna help move the song forward in whatever, what the duties are under the publishing. And so we'll talk about some of the duties on just the publishing right now. We ain't gonna talk about the administration for a second. We'll get back to that 15%. But the duties are, for instance, right? So we'll try to we'll find distribution for you. We'll try to, if you're a songwriter who don't perform your own songs, we'll try to find artists to perform your songs or record your songs. Try to find placements, whether that's placements in commercials, ads, movies, people that we work with, people that movie directors. That's exploiting the material. Just trying to find opportunities to move the song forward. Try to give licenses to other people who's covering the material. Try to find bands to cover the material. Try to find bands to, perform it live, right? Because if the band perform the music live, right, and you filling out all your paperwork where they performing it at, who you think get paid? Not the band, the writer, right? The band might get performed if they could charge a cover fee, but as far as the publishing coming in, that goes to the writer, not to the band, right? But somebody got to be filing this stuff, right? When you're performing at these venues, if somebody goes perform, I don't care what artist, go performs Beyonce songs or songs written by Beyonce, or even songs that Beyonce performing, the writer gets the performance fee, not Beyonce. She gets, of course, what she get paid for. They paying for her as a performer at the show, but the residual, the writing income, if she's not a writer, it goes to the writers. So doing those type of things, making sure those type of things are filed for every song you do, every performance you do. You got some writers or performers who write their own songs and they outperforming at these venues, and yeah, they getting paid their money for, if they lucky, if they're a draw as an artist, they getting paid for performing, but then they're not even filing their records, their songs, to get paid as a writer, right? And they don't have nobody doing it for them. So those are the things that publishers do on a day in, day out. Little things that you might not notice, that you might not get. But those are the things, because if nobody's not doing it for you, guess what? Your money is still accruing, but it's going to the highest earners, to all of the respective societies and the people who are doing it, right? That's where your money is going to, if nobody's not doing it on your behalf, or you're not doing it as a self-administered writer, right? Because it starts with the writer, the author, and by law, the law said, as a writer, you're going to need some help, and the person or people that should help you are publishers. And that's it. The same way record labels supposedly, or allegedly, they support, when it's done right, they help recording artists. So, yep. Hopefully, that answered that. Again, I tend to ramble when I'm talking about publishers, rambling business, because it's really, it's really about, filing stuff meticulously, looking for, being able to look when something looks wrong, right? You got an asset, you got a property, something look wrong, being able to say, man, something don't quite look right about this, and then going back, going through steps to try to find out, where that, leak is at, or that wrong is at, and see if it's affecting other things. Usually when you find something that's wrong, it's going to affect something else, and affect the way some money is accruing, or why certain monies is not getting remitted back to you as a writer. Even a simple thing as a writer giving their songs to artists, or somebody say, an artist say, I want to I'm gonna pay you $200 for one of your songs. They make a record out of it. They go, upload it to a distribution platform, TuneCore. Don't know how to, it ain't their business to do your BMI and check where they performing at and all of that stuff. And you thinking it ain't your business because you ain't the performer. But guess what? Everywhere they record go, your song go because your song is embedded under. Even the money that should be coming back from, TuneCore, there's royalties in there that you should be getting. You know what I'm saying? Especially if, say they go press up physical. I see it all the time. An artist will go press up, 300, CDs, right, of a song that they didn't write, but they perform. Guess what? They supposed to pay that writer some money for pressing up those CDs, whether it sells or not. And that money, if it don't come from the writer, it's supposed to come from the manufacturing company who pressed it up. It's law. If not, that's piracy that they've done. But if you don't know this and it's just not your job to figure it out, you still have manufacturers in America who press up millions of CDs. I mean, not CDs. Yeah, CDs or and downloads is the same thing, or records. Vinyl is getting popular again. And the writers is not going back to them saying, you owe me money for pressing up music that got my song embedded. Don't matter if you're the artist or not. The writer's supposed to get paid now 12 cents. It used to be 9.1. Well, I think, I'm not sure if they agreed to it yet. I don't know when it's going to go into operation, but it'll go up to 12 cents sometime shortly. So, yeah. So that answered that,
Okay.
hopefully.
Awesome, thank you. So the difference between a record and a song is just um, um it's not in it's just like the song is just the actual thing being made and who the roles that people played in it, and then the record is just the thing that goes out.
Yeah. No, so the record is the recording that's made,
Okay.
right? That's going out to the marketplace. When you go into the studio and you do the final master and say, okay, this is a complete record, it's done, we're ready to put it out for sale, consumption, to the radio, everywhere. That's the record. What's embedded in the record is the composition, the song, right? The people who made the actual song, the lyrics, the melody, the instrumentation, the stuff that's embedded in the record. And again, we so loosely think of it as being the same person, but it don't always have to be. You could have one person doing the performance that recorded the song, and it could be 20 people who actually did the writing. You know what I'm saying, of the song. So just think of it. I like to think of it as one as the composition. That's all of the stuff that's going into making the song. The lyrics, the melody, the beat, the words, everything, and then what's being recorded and being put out to the world as a record. You know what I'm saying? Whether that record is being transmitted digitally, terrestrial, however it's being, broadcasted or consumed by the public. But, and those are the two sides of the copyright, because they're two different copyrights. You're going to copyright the record, and then you're going to copyright the composition. And it could be the same person or the same people, or it could be totally different people, on both their, the respective sides.
So what makes the difference in a copyright? Just the master?
Yes, one is a record and one is a composition. That's what makes it the difference. Like, so one is the final recording. So the final recording, like when you go in the studio, right? So you can write your song down on a piece of paper, right? And the person who's doing the music can actually, hum it. And then y'all go put that on, maybe, y'all go put that on a device, record it. But this is not the master yet because it's not a finished thing. But then y'all go into a studio, record the vocals or whoever the artist y'all using. Then y'all give it off to a engineer, they mix the record, give it to a mastering engineer, they master the engineer and say, this is the final one that's going out to the public. That's your recording master, right? You copyright that. That's the recording master. That's one side of the copyright. And who's usually going to control that is usually the record labels, right? Or who own that master. It could be the artist, it could be whoever, or the producer usually turns it over to the record label, right? But so that's usually how it works, especially when you think of the major systems or how it worked in the past. The composition is the songwriters writing it, when it's in a tangible form, it's usually turned over to the publisher. They do all of the filing of that stuff. They copyright that. So you got two sides that's copyrighted. If it's all of the same people on both sides, it can be copyrighted at one time. If it's any slight difference, you have to do it separate, and you do that with the copyright gov. The government copyright.gov is the site you do your copyrights with. And then after you do your copyrights, you go to your publishing PRO, whoever you with, BMI or ASCAP or CSAC. Not many people is with them, and you file, what's called your publishing split, based on the writers. Then when you do on the record side, you go to your record, you do what's considered your points, and you do your point splits. And who you really gonna see on your point splits predominantly are artists and producers. Who you gonna predominantly see on your publishing splits is writers and publishers and composers. So, and the composer and the producer could be the same person, the same way the writer and the artist could be the same person. And in this day and age, a lot of times that's the case, right? The artist and the writer is the same person, and the composer and the producer is the same person. But it wasn't always the predominant way, the way music was made. If you think about the, I like to call the Motown era, right? Usually the people who wrote the songs didn't write the music. And usually the people who wrote the songs and who wrote the music wasn't the people who was performing it, right? You had some breakout people, right? At the beginning, the only person who was really doing that was Smokey Robinson, right? Everybody else, they was fighting to be able to write their own music, and Berry Gordy wouldn't allow it. Later on, then Marvin Gaye, Stevie Wonder, certain people start writing their own music because, they start realizing they was also prolific writers. But that was more so when Motown started, signed over to Universal. Berry Gordy wasn't really at the helm no more. And, artists start, writing their own music. But the early days of Motown, if you wasn't Smokey Robinson, that was unheard of. So, yep. And some labels are still the same way.
Okay. One last question. Can you go back over the percentage breakdowns, like what role gets what percentage, I guess, in the publishing and the record copyrights?
Yeah. Well, the record, we haven't really talked about the record. We've been talking more about the publishing today. And the record could be very, it's the record labels who usually control that. So the points really could go to, anybody. But so what I talked about earlier was the publishing between the publisher and the writer. So what we say is, if you think about your publishing as 100%, right? 50% automatically goes to the writer, right? Or writers if it's more than one writer. But, since we're just talking about one writer's interest, right? If I'm the publisher, I'm only talking about that one writer's interest. So 50% goes to the writer. Then it's 50% left, right? Now you start talking about administration. So normally 15% goes to whoever is administering. And it could be higher, it could be lower, but what's standard and what you usually find usually goes to whoever's administering the publishing. And what administering is, because I didn't talk about a lot of the stuff they do, is those are the people who are going to, or person or entity that's going to list you with all of the societies, make sure that the copyright, protect the integrity of the copyright, really make sure that nobody is going down as a writer who didn't actually write, or who the writers didn't agree to give a writing interest for one reason or another. You know what I'm saying? So making sure that nobody is, getting in there. Everybody that's in there is integral to the song. Making sure that, everything is just all the I's is dotted, T's is crossed, payments that's coming in, whoever's supposed to get paid, the money is getting paid to them. The payments that's coming in from the respective societies is right. Making sure all of the societies got all of the proper ways to identify the writers, whether it's through, the various different codes, IPI numbers, ISNI numbers, ISRC numbers, any license that was given out, was properly licensed. The licensees know who to pay, when to pay, how to pay when their license is up. Different things like that. All of the logistical stuff, we should say, is what goes into the administration. Making sure if you do have some agreements with record labels, that the record labels is paying, because it's a fight to get those mechanicals from the record labels. So different things like that is what the administration going to do. So that's worth usually 15%. Then you have 35% left of the publishing, which is given to the entities, the people who's actually exploiting and creating opportunities for the property, right? Going out there and helping the property make money, not the record, because the record makes money just through streaming and selling. But right, we might have to go out and, like I said earlier, find a band to cover the record, find somebody to reproduce the record, if song, I should say, or find somebody who could use elements of the song to make new records, and making sure they paying you for using that portion of the copyright. um you know Different things, and that's why I stated, if you just really making your own material and the material is made, and you have no desire to exploit the music outside of what you could create, the records you create, you probably don't need a publisher. You know what I'm saying? Because you don't need things that publishers actually are going to do for you. You can just get an administrator and they'll collect your money for you. You know what I'm saying? Whatever money is there from your record that's generating, because sometimes, and the people on the record side is going to be the people who's going to be, you shouldn't give a percentage away to a publisher just because you need your record promoted. Right? Go find a record promoter to promote your record and give them some points on your record and keep your publishing interest. Right? But you only would know that if you know what publishing does. If you don't know what publishing does, if you're just an artist and you want to promote your record, you don't need a publisher.
I have a question for you. What do you look for when you're signing talent to your company?
Well, I mean,
specifically specifically writers.
Right. So if we're talking about writers, I look for people who can write great songs or have the potential to be able to write great songs so I can exploit them. That's simple. And the desire to get their songs out to other people than just themselves, whether those are songs, whether they write music. So if they write music, write great music, and I'll try to find, great artists, or, artists to put it with it, or, we try to, like Bot said earlier, network with different artists, go to different workshops, be around different people who could help move it forward. So as a writer, the really end of it is somebody who could write great songs, and more important, somebody who's a great person and have some, who's looking for somebody who could publish their music in the right way, not somebody who's just looking for somebody to blow up their record, right? Because if they're just looking for somebody to blow up their record, because they're not necessarily looking for a publisher, and they also not a great person, right? When they find somebody who could blow up their record but don't necessarily do anything with the publishing side, they're going to try to give it to that person, and I'm going to be fighting for my publishing interest of all of the groundwork that I've been doing. So a great writer and a great person is really what I look for. Anything else is just like, let's see, what could happen. Anything else is just, potential, is predicated on circumstances and conditions, and, because we don't know where a song going to be or where the song is going to make its money. And I always use this as a reference. Dolly Parton and her publisher probably had no idea that Whitney Houston, I know they had no idea that Whitney Houston was going to come along 20 some odd years later and remake her song and make it that big. Not to say that that song wasn't big for Dolly, or I forgot the other, I think somebody else made a record out of it too. But they sure didn't do what Whitney did with it, right? And so publishing is, sometimes it could be a very, very, very long game. And sometimes the work that's done is not noticed. And if you're not dealing with people who know what publishing is, and can't make a distinction between publish the composition and the record, they're not really gonna understand what publishers do, right? And you know, again, to promote your record or to blow your record up is not a good enough reason to give anybody a percentage of your publishing. And it's not good enough reason for a publisher to take you on as a client. Like, it's just not. So,
How does one from this point on? Because I always believe in a saying that closed mouths don't get fed. But I'd love to shoot some music over to you too, and possibly have a further conversation past the app if that's available.
oh yeah, most definitely. You could hit me on message me on Instagram. Here, even on the back channel, I don't have as many back channels as Pod Scott, and I will answer and I'll send you my phone number, and then we'll talk, and have some discussions, and or you can send me your number in the message, and I'll call you. Probably during the week. I usually do a lot of office stuff from the morning, usually after 12 because we hold in the room here. Weekdays from 8 to 12. So sometimes I'll have to have attention earlier than that, but we'll get a time together and we'll talk off the app. But it's that simple. I don't make it that hard because it's really that simple. Yeah, just reach out to me. I'll reach back, man, and we'll see if it's something, if it's interest, past that.
Thank you, man. I appreciate everything. All the answers you've answered for me and others. They've all been helpful. So I'm definitely gonna reach out to you, man. Thank you, and Bots and Rothstein, everybody else.
And for those who don't know, Lewis is my distributor for my album. The link you see at the top, the Cookout album, which is doing crazy numbers as an independent. And when I the same questions you don't trust me. When we first got started, I was texting Lewis every 3 hours. Hey, what about this? Hey, what about this? Hey, what about this? Because I've been doing this for a minute, but I've never put out an album. So it was just a lot of questions I had about distribution and publishing. I had to make sure I vetted him, which is, something we always talk about. Do your research on the people, you're thinking about doing business with. But as a client, I can only say great things about it. You know what I mean? Answers every question, very knowledgeable as y'all hear. So, I tell everybody, man, forget DistroKid, forget TuneCore, definitely forget the ones that rape you the most, United Masters. And y'all need to tap in with that tribute music and join the team. So where you can see more of your money that you can use for your honey. Giggity, giggity. Back to you, Louis.
Thank you. Yeah, and that's always, man, it's just a great testament to work with. And I could say the same things about Bots, that he said about me coming from the standpoint of him as a independent artist, songwriter, advocate. Like when I seen what Bots was doing with the Cookout, like he was already doing a lot of roles that actually publishers do, that say they publishers that they don't do. So he was putting writers in an environment where they can create and not worry about getting ripped off. And even if they didn't do it at the moment in the studio when they call, because I had a writer go to the first Cookout that I had. I couldn't even go, but I sent a writer that I work with. He called me, later way later after I sent him the song, realizing that I was also going to be the distributor and publishing, with Bots on a project. Like, hey man, listen to this great project. He was like, man, I helped write one of those songs. I was like, oh yeah, you didn't say nothing to me. Called Bots. Bots like, you know what, you right, and he knew automatically. Let's get this straight. And a lot of times that it's so easy, like we was talking earlier, to go to things like this and fall through the cracks. And if the people who's not over the summit, we're gonna call it a summit because that's what it is, music summit, is not over the summit, is not knowledgeable in those areas and not at heart good people, it's easy for your music and your intellectual property and your money to just fall through cracks. And a lot of times, even when they're good people or knowledgeable, if you don't say nothing, it could fall through the crack just because you didn't say nothing. Like it could be that easy. So, it's it's just an easy when you're working with people who's doing the things that they say they are. You know, they being who they are. You know, they're not just taking the role, but doing the work and recognizing them and compensating them. You know, sometimes we get caught up. I, you know, like me as a publisher, I talk to writers a lot, and we a lot of times they get caught up in the percentages of this is the roles that we just said, these percentages, and a lot of times we talking about percentages like it's really something, and I know the writer saying, yo, well, it's gonna be something because I'm the greatest writer or the greatest, but really that's all speculation because we don't know, right? But we haven't really made anything, right? And we talking about percentages, and they'll fight on percentages, but don't look at what's really being have to be done. And that's what happened when they go into these major publishing companies or major record labels. They look at these percentages, but in the schedules, they cut you to death. And those percentages, even though it says you getting 25%, after they finish cutting you on course, that percentage is in theory it says 25%. In practice, that percentage end up being like 5%, right? Because they cut you every which way they could think of cutting you, right? And those percentages are before cost. And like I think it was Rothstein who said earlier, somebody said they hired T.I. or whatever for the video, and I mean for the record, and they paid for their wardrobe, and it was like 40,000, for T-shirts and Dickie suits, and that money went in people's pockets, and they do it on the publishing side, and they also do it on the record label side, and again, you could just I always say, just remember. We're talking about mostly the publishing side today of how the composition splits are, right? The 50% starts off with 50% from the writer. So again, when you hear somebody say somebody took all my publishing, they're only really talking about that other 50% that goes to the publisher. Not saying that's right, but usually that's what they're talking about. There's no way in law for somebody to take all your publishing unless they take your writing side, which is supposed to be law. You're only supposed to give anybody a writing interest unless they did some writing. So, if you got a publisher and they saying, man, let me just get down on 20% of the writing. I don't want, right? I don't want, the publishing. Guess what? You just split your interest of your whole asset, which now that 20% of the writing side is really more valuable than you just gave them 40% in theory of a whole publishing interest, right? Because they're going to get 20% on the writing side and 20% on the publishing side as the writer. So, because it's an asset class, you know what I'm saying? And it's secured by the Congress, you know what I'm saying? Like, the value, the equity of it is secure. It's a security. And, so you can split it up a lot of different ways, and, assign people interest. So just remember that, and the splits, just think about it as an asset the same way intellectual property is the same as real property, and sometimes it's even better because there's a lot of upkeep with real property that you don't necessarily you're not going to have with intellectual property to drive equity in it. Like you have to do with your house or your land or whatever. You got to do some some things. Of course, you got to do some upkeep with your intellectual property, but it's not the same. So yep. Any more questions, answers, concerns? 'Cause, Saturday mornings we will get out of here.
I was gonna say I was using I just started dropping I just dropped my first single, and I used Lander to drop my first one. I'm thinking I'm gonna tap in with you to see if just kind of find out a better method, because after I did it, somebody was telling me that I don't know if that's the way you want to go with the whole using Lander to drop it, because you're never gonna see all the money behind it. So
I'm not familiar with Lander distribution service. I know they do like some mastering stuff, or like it's like I didn't know they actually had. I mean, I'm not surprised. A lot of people is getting into the distribution space because it's very lucrative at this time for independent artists to distribute their music. Even I think TikTok now has formed their own or licensed their distribution company through some, through another company. And Avid Pro Tools, they have their own, distribution company. I didn't know Landa was in the space as well. So I'm not familiar with them, but certainly, definitely we can have a conversation about what we do. I'm assuming, when you say drop it, that's what you're talking about, distribution, not publishing.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So yep, our company is called Tribute Music. Again, we distribute mostly independent artists. We work with them, side by side, try to do whatever we can do, not just with the music, but with the things around the music, activities. We get in there and do what we can to make the asset move. So yeah, just reach out and I'll reach out. So I can't really answer about Landa Service because I know them for being, for mastering music, not necessarily distributing it.
Respect. I appreciate that. I appreciate somebody who's willing to say, hey, I don't know much about that, but we can talk about what I do know. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Yep. Any more questions, concerns? And hopefully, we're getting something out of it. So the main point of today, I wanted everybody really to understand the process of, publishing, who publishers work with, writers, as a writer, what to look for, because again, the writer is the authority. All publishing, starts with the writer as authority, and then, they realize they want representation or need representation in the form of a publisher, and then they come to some type of agreement with the publisher, to administer or work with the publishing interest of the publishing, and what things, what are some reasons to want a publisher, and what are some reasons not to, like don't. Again, like I keep saying, if your main goal is to blow up your record, get some marketing for your record, get some promotion for your record, that's not a good reason to look for a publisher. You know what I'm saying? Because publishers don't really work with artists. They do, but they work with artists through the publishing, through writers. So, you should be looking for, producers, record labels, marketing companies, standalone marketing companies. Because although publishing does market songs, which in turns help market records, but it's, we market it and promote from the publishing side. You know what I'm saying? Not so much from the record side, and one thing I could tell you this too, right? When you see marketing on radio for radio, who gets paid when a record has success at radio? Publishers, not record labels. And I'm talking about traditional terrestrial radio, right? And so getting record labels to spend money at radio traditionally was, you pulling legs. You know why? Because the only way they make money is when it turns into record sales, because they don't get money unless it went through they publishing company. That's why they have all these weird clauses. We talked about like control composition clause and all of that stuff, so they could try to get some of that money back. If you they artists, they don't want to take outside writers. If they do, they're not gonna pay the whole writer's fee, or they only pay it up to 10 songs. You see all types of weird stuff in these contracts, so they can marginalize the writers because they don't get paid. It could get played, every day in all markets of radio. The record company don't get paid. That money goes back to publishers, right? It's not, streaming don't work the same way. You know what I'm saying? So it's a difference, right? So now that's why you see a lot of big record labels, they're not paying that money to radio no more, because they don't even get paid for it. So now they holding, publishers a lot of time accountable. Like, yo, y'all need to help us with this radio budget, right? And publishers market to radio in a different way. You know what I'm saying? Like, so knowing who gets paid from the consumption of your music is a leg up, and it helps you determine when or if you need a publisher, when or if you need a record label, or somebody to do those services. Again, or those jobs, whether it's on the record label side or it's on the publishing side. And to remember that, just always think about the two sides, the master and the composition. If you start thinking about these things, it'll start clicking after a while, right? Like I'll be, or somebody else who give you the same type of information, I'll be that little bird on your shoulder sometimes when you're filling out this stuff or you sitting in these rooms, right? Does this have something to do with the record? or does this have something to do with the composition? Who's supposed to be paying me here? Is it the record label or is it the publisher? How is my money accruing? You know what I'm saying? Is it, so, because a record label don't collect mechanical publishing or public performance publishing. They pay it, right? And they pay it begrudgingly in most instances. You know what I'm saying? And they put all, lots of weird stuff so they could pay less. So if you the writer and you also the artist, you like a little ping pong ball. You know what I'm saying? And if you don't know, they're just gonna be pinging you every which way. And every time they ping you, when the publishing company ping you back to the record label, they're gonna cut some, and vice versa. And a lot of times it's the same entity if you're in a major system. You know what I'm saying? The public, you know what I'm saying? It's just, Sony's publishing entity along with their record label entity. So you gotta know, you gotta know where you stand and who you are and recognize whether, you producing or you composing or you doing both. And if you're doing both, you should be paid on both sides. You should be accredited on both sides. You should be rewarded on both sides. But you gotta know that, which is which. So that's, that would be my biggest takeaway, and I really wanted to talk about this today because, a lot of people are reaching out in terms of, I'm speaking to them about, and they speaking to me about, handling publishing for them, and they really have no idea of what it is. And when I sense that this might not even be a good situation for me because they don't understand it, and I'm saying, well, you know what, I'll pass on this because you really don't even understand what, you giving away or what you want to do because you're looking for something else. They think sometimes I'm being, arrogant or and I'm not. It's just that I already know where it's going to go to. So, I think people should understand who you need in every instance or who you should be working with. And this is even before any deal because I ain't talking about a deal because a deal is just a concession. You know what I'm saying? And everybody got their own reason why they should or should not take a deal. Most of the time, a deal is based on, financials. You know what I'm saying? Of, taking care of you while you're, while you're working. If you're going to be a successful songwriter, um, sometimes, you got to be able to write songs. You got to be in a financial situation where you could write a song without worrying about how you're going to eat, right? So sometimes, that's where the deal come in at. So, or if, because that's basically, Boss always says, basically a glorified loan. But the deal really has nothing to do with, you know what I'm saying? Well, I ain't gonna say nothing to do with it because, it's a correlation, but it shouldn't be, the agreement, the work is not necessarily always based on the deal because the deal is just a concession. And I always tell people, if you get a deal, it's not a time to celebrate. A deal is not a celebration, it's an obligation. Like, you got to meet the points of that deal. If not, it's going to be some repercussions. You know what I'm saying? And you got to know what you're giving up in that deal, what concessions you're making. Sometimes that concession comes in terms of your freedom, the songs that you want to write, right? If you made a deal as opposed to just an agreement where you could write, have creative, show whatever. If you made a deal and you write, basically, you great at writing, let's just say love ballads, but your deal, the people that you made the deal with, the market that they in is in, pop music. Guess what type of music you gonna be writing? Pop music. Because they can't sell love ballads. You know what I'm saying? Right. And they're gonna take your saved love ballads and bring producers in there to turn it into pop music and find artists who could perform pop music because that's what they know how to sell. You know what I'm saying? And, because they work with songwriters, they might not necessarily be interested in you as an artist because you think your songs are made. Lionel Richie left because, he didn't make the type, he wanted to write ballads. And I know I'm jumping, you know what I'm saying? And they appreciate it, but that's not what his band really wanted to push. You know what I'm saying? And that's not what, the record labels that they were signed with wanted to push. And Lionel Richie also wrote country songs. You know what I'm saying? And he had the foresight to know that's what his money as a writer was going to be. And then that was the direction his career started going in. as an artist as well. And he had breakout success as a solo based on the music that he was, writing. But had he stayed with that same record label, and I think he started with Motown where, they wasn't allowed to write their songs at first. He was one of the writers who started writing later. But they came later with Motown too as well. So just knowing who you are in the instance is a big portion. And that's the main thing I want to get across to anybody as a writer whether you're looking for a publishing deal, whether you're just looking for an independent publisher to work with, whether you're going to be a self-administered writer and then you're going to find just a publishing admin to administer the technical stuff. No matter what, publishing is publishing. And again, it starts off with 50% to the writer. And, once you assign the other 50%, it start with 15% who's going to be doing the administration. And then you have 35% left for the actual publishers who's going to exploit the property, the songs, go do the work, of the publishing. And that could be split respectively among one person or 30 people. And then there's also what's called sub-publishing, in terms of if, just say you was gonna work with another publisher in a foreign territory, and that would be considered sub-publishing. So you have, within publishing now you have a few situations. You have the writer, right? You have the publisher. You have the publishing admin. You have the co-publishing if you have, different publishers, or the co-publishing. And if you're going even deeper and granular into different foreign markets, you have what's called a self-publisher. But it all goes from that same 100%. And everybody, it's just math, right? And accounting and, different things like that. And people doing their jobs. So hopefully, we kind of starting the point of who are, what publishers do, who they represent, how they represent them, and how it can be, navigated and negotiated. And we was talking about deals, or and somebody say, best time for a deal, when you got the most leverage, right? Just write your songs, find ways to get them out there. Most of the time, so all of this is public information. Publishers, BMI has databases. The MLC, which do all the mechanicals in the U.S., have databases. All the foreign publishing societies have databases. Publishers know what songwriters is making noise and not. If you really, if it's a really deal on the table, they'll come looking for you. That don't mean you should take it. You know what I'm saying? Especially if you don't know what publishing is. Same way record labels gonna come looking for you. If you hot, they're gonna come looking for you. They're gonna knock on your door. If you hot. You know what I'm saying? Trust me, they will. You know what I'm saying? And they're gonna keep knocking.
Hello. They show bugging the fuck out of me.
They're gonna keep knocking because that's the business they in. You know what I'm saying? And it ain't gonna come in the form of these dudes reaching out to you on these internet saying, pay them this or do that or do that. If a record label is interested in you, it's gonna look a totally different way. They're gonna call you, or they're gonna get in contact with your manager. They're gonna fly you out. They're gonna pay for your stuff. They might give you, if you that small, they'll give you development deals. They don't do that much anymore, you know what I'm saying? But if they really want you, if your music is hot and it's not based on, this fabricated fan base, they'll give you money. I know artists, they gave them money with no records out. Because they have people that sit in these offices and listen to people music online and say, oh, I like that. Not the fan base, I like that, because guess what? They know they can sell that music already. They just got to plug you into their system. You know what I'm saying? It ain't going to be this, this fabricated, we interested in you. All you got to do is pay this. It ain't going to be none of that, because that ain't how they operate. Like, I've never seen it work like that in my life. And not saying I'm the know-all about, how the music business work. But most of the time, those marketing, and again, it's not always going to lead to a scam, but sometimes it's just a marketing ploy. They're just getting your attention. That's all. know what I'm saying? But when somebody really wants something, have a record label, you know, and it don't have to be a big record label. It's just a record label that might, you know, they making money from what they doing, right? They ain't gonna ask you to pay for nothing to come meet them. They just, you know, I've never seen it happen like that. Now, I've seen the reverse. I've seen record labels give artists money that have no music out. And I mean large sums of money sometimes. Saying, and I've also seen that sometimes that same artists get shelved with that money they gave them. You know what I'm saying? And they can't do that. So, you know, it's still lots of, different, but I've never seen a record label or somebody who's really making money in the business ask an artist to pay them to when they really interested in doing something with their music. I just haven't. No publishing company, that's not, that's usually not the conversation. Um, so just be careful. But again, the main thing I wanted to get across today is the identities of people when in regards to publishing. When you look in your pro, if you notice, they usually talk about composers and writers. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, it's a portion to list who performed it, right? But when you start talking about who they say they represent, they're usually talking about composers and writers. And again, that producer can also be the composer, but BMI or ASCAP is really recognizing them as a composer at that point, the maker of the music that's embedded in the record, who was turned over, who the producer created, right? So as the song, as you write the song, you giving the producer and the record label that first right that we talked about at the beginning of those rights, the right to reproduce, right? Which is really the right to produce. You know what I'm saying? And then in some instances, a right to make a derivative work, right? Because sometimes the sound recording in some instances is considered a derivative work because you're making a new copyright, you know what I'm saying, on the recording. So, and then there's, other type of derivative works, but that's also, one. So as a songwriter, and a publisher, if you also the artist, you giving yourself a license to reproduce your own work, and the producers that you work with. So you actually, you're exercising that first right, that right to reproduce. And then in some instances, again, the right to make a derivative. And then when you start putting it into, the marketplace, you're getting into the right to distribute, right? Then the right to perform publicly. If you, like we said, we give it, just say you give that same song to a band and say, go perform it, around the world. If you just a writer, of course, you're not performing with the band, you as the writer, but they still performing your works. The right to display, when your work is displayed, whether that's digital or, physical. But a lot of times when the right to display, we give up that right to the record labels because they say, I'm not going to pay you just to display your work that I'm marketing and promoting. So in that contract, you give up that, right to display, because that goes into them saying we marketing your music or we promoting your music. But that's also a right. That's the right to display publicly. You know what I'm saying? And then the sixth one is in regards to just the sound recording, the right to perform publicly by digital transmission, because the radio stations long ago fought not to have to pay on both sides. So they don't pay on the record side. They only pay on the composition side when your record gets streamed across satellite radio, or I should say broadcast on satellite radio, even movies. If your record or song gets in a movie, you get in public performance. In America, you're not going to get that recording portion. Around the world, you will. If your record is even played in the theaters that the movie is in, and your movie is in the soundtrack, there's a royalty for that around the world. So knowing some of these nuances, that's why sometimes it would pay to get a sub-publisher, right? Because If you are an American publisher and you only domicile in America, you're not going to necessarily collect that. So you go get a sub-publisher in those territories so you can collect that money. And that's why you give up, some of those rights in those territories to get a sub-publisher so you can collect that money. Or a publishing admin sometimes can help you as well because they collect around the world. So yeah, knowing those different nuances, you ain't gonna know it all. You're not gonna be able to take all this information with you, but what you can take with you is remembering how that 100% is split up as a standard as a writer, and remember you also, it's a different side on the recording if you was also the artist. That'll take you a long way. At least, get the, when sometimes when these contracts is put in your face, you'll kind of understand. You get a recording contract in your face and you see something like a control composition clause, right? And you're like, man, why that's in there, right? Because they're trying to control the publishing side, right? They have really nothing to do with it because this is a recording contract, but it helps them cut their costs. Of how they're gonna pay you as a writer or the writers that wrote the song that you singing if you wasn't a writer on the actual song. So yep. So hopefully some of this stuff is starting to make sense. And if you got any more questions, we can get them out now. If not, again, I'm gonna close the room down, or we can have general conversation. Certainly, some of the other moderators can carry the conversation because this is the Music Networking No Egos. We're talking about making and protecting your copyrights, but we do this Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. Eastern to 12 p.m. It goes over a lot where we, talk about not just the music business, but we talk about radio, comedy, entertainment, and a lot of other things, just life in general. We get some great insight from some great people throughout the week. And then we have other specialty rooms like comedy on Thursday, content creation on Monday, cryptocurrency and technology on Sunday, Friday nights just kicking it after dark, and a host of other things coming up in the plans and in the works. With the rooms is just a great, wealth of information, how to carry yourself in this entertainment business. And I like to say, if you come to this room for any time and you really get cheated in the music business, I just say shame on you. I don't necessarily have a lot of remorse for you in that situation. Certainly like, sympathy, because we all been in, in a situation when things didn't kind of go right for us. I, can't say that I've really been cheated in the music business. I haven't always, got the best side of it. But, most of the time, if I make a concession, I usually know why I'm making that concession. I'm never making that concession, out of force or out of, being tricked. I usually have some benefit, and that concession that I have to make to get the other benefit is worth it. And then I just try to limit the time that I have to make that concession and get out of that agreement as quick as possible, and, kind of lessen the blow. But, not everybody, has that ability or, been fortunate enough to do that. So, that's what these rooms was created, this club was created for by Bots Rothstein and Auntie Jackie. And, some other people that, was there before. I can't remember the names I always hear mentioned, but, when the room was first created, but that's what, it was created for. Similarly, that's the whole cookout experience, was created for that. So if you come to this room and you get cheated, like really, it's shame on you, because people here will answer your questions, irregardless if you're doing business with them or not. You know what I'm saying? Like, I know me. I don't have to publish you for you to call me and ask me or write me a question. I'll answer it to my best ability. Of course, I won't go into all of the nuances of it because I'm not your representative. But certainly, I will put you in the right direction. And give you, the basis of what you're looking for. So if you get cheated, really coming to this room, I just say, man, you just missing the point. The same way if you're not networking in this room, you kind of missing the point. And I would stop there and just say, if we got any questions, we'll try to answer some more. I'm gonna get out of here as soon as possible to go be with my family. That's my, again, I say it a lot, man, but that's the biggest joy of my
That's your
day.
first job, Lou. We get it.